Welcome to the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast, a conversation built to help you address the mess, connect the dots, and defeat addiction. Doing your work matters because if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Life is tough and we're here to help. I'm your host, Ben Derrick, and as always, I'll be joined by Roane Hunter. Let's jump right in.
Well, the gang's all here.
Oh, man. The good stuff today. There's no
right.
doubt.
I'm the special guest.
That's right.
On
Don't you?
our podcast.
You just feel so welcome when you come in, right?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
that's good. That's the goal.
Yes.
Yeah. And all the listeners breathe a sigh of relief.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're so glad.
Hey,
Yeah.
did you guys hear that last episode? Ron was explaining the brain.
It was a snooze fest.
Actually, no, it wasn't a snooze fest. It was pretty awesome because it helps a lot of people understand why can I not just information and will myself to change. Every environment we're in tells us that should be possible, right?
Oh, yeah. I thought it was a great discussion. And we're going
If I do say so myself.
We're going to continue today.
Yeah.
Going a little deeper with it. But yeah, it's just the whole process of change. And this is true on, and I'm just going to use the addict side of the fence and the partner side of the fence. It's a both and. If things are going to change in the relationship, it's going to take two people doing their work.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
It gets complicated, right, in that respect.
Oh, yeah.
Because already I wasn't good at changing. Now I've got to change with someone. Holy moly.
Yeah, and we always say, there's really no such thing as marriage counseling. You've got two individuals that hopefully are willing to engage in their work and their process, and then you have a chance that the marriage could not only survive the crisis, but actually thrive. And we have many couples that will tell you, man, I wouldn't trade what we went through for anything. We say that.
Absolutely, because, you have the opportunity to have a new foundation, something that you get to design for yourself, because you go into the relationship not a lot of self-awareness typically about what has happened to me, what has happened through me, and how has it affected me, and how is it now showing up in the relationship?
So much of what we're experiencing in our couple dynamics often, I feel, is avoidance, right? That's kind of what got us here.
Absolutely.
The nature
So
of addiction is avoidance, right? But what you guys are painting the picture of, even just briefly so far, is now we have a relationship built on awareness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those things feel very different.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of work to get there, though.
Yeah, it is. I know the first 2 years after discovery, I wasn't willing, or I couldn't even think about my own part of the dance in our relationship, what I had brought into the marriage. I couldn't go there. It really did take us having time apart for me for my brain to settle down so that I could look at my own contributions.
Yeah, we talked about that in the last episode. When discovery happens, and you've got two people that are in high levels of emotional crisis, and chances are neither one of them know how to regulate their emotions. That's what we call the intimacy disorder. And so now we're just spinning, and we know that the brain cannot heal in that environment because it's just hyper arousal after discovery. Mm-hmm. And I just think back, man, how would I know how to deal with my emotions? All I was doing was acting out to deal with my emotions or not deal with them. That's what acting out is. I'm acting out the emotional side of me that I am not even aware of. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I wasn't aware of how I parented you, how I rescued you, how I enabled you. I just didn't even see any of that. And now I know how I was set up to do that. Really, I'm a firstborn. overly responsible, and just the dynamics in my own family of origin contributed to my setup to be able to do that. So, I thought I was being loving, and, I was actually harming myself and our relationship.
Yeah, and that's we talk about the 4 C's. You didn't cause it, you can't change it, you can't control it, but it's the contribution, right?
Right.
We all contribute if it's a relationship.
Yes.
There's a contribution, and so at some point, I think a lot of times, the wife, the partner, will want to just say everything bad in my life is because of what my husband did. Well, there's certainly, it wasn't good, but everything in your life started when you were born. And so there were other things that went into the mix that kind of set up the partner. It's like you were set up to marry me because you grew up in a home where hidden addiction was present.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And so it felt very familiar for you when, we even started dating at 15. By the way, yesterday was our anniversary.
42 years.
42 years.
Man.
Yeah.
How you just side mention that?
I know. It's like, now
and it seems like yesterday.
I know. I am including our 1 year sabbatical.
We do include that. Yes.
I love that it's included.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
It helped us, though, to rebuild a new foundation by doing our own work individually and then as a couple as well. Going through some of the steps we didn't have the option to do at the time, but we know how important it is, and we've seen it in other couples that we work with. When towards the end of our process, our roadmap, the wife will write, or the spouse, the betrayed partner will write an impact letter, also known as a grievance letter, of all the ways she's been hurt in the relationship. The addict will take that letter and he will write an amends letter. And then Ron and I get to be the witnesses of those letters. And it truly is holy ground. It's going to make me cry. Thinking about just what we get to witness, how they really do, how they're really heard by one another, and they rebuild a new foundation. Many of the couples we work with go on to renew their vows or remarry, as we did, and have new vows, and we've gotten to be present in a lot of those too. And it's
I've gotten to officiate.
You have, and you're
cool.
really, really good at it.
And it's legitimate because I am ordained.
Yeah. I love when you call, not because I want to talk to you, but I see your bobblehead or whatever.
That's my pastor head.
Yes, it's amazing.
Everybody needs to call Ron so you get to see it.
Yeah, it's like it is the most dramatic contradiction in one picture I've ever seen.
And you don't have to. You can hang up if you want to. You don't have to leave a message or anything.
Yeah, only legends get bobbleheads.
That's
Remember
right.
that.
Yeah. I've not reached that status yet. So, we're kind of hovering around a little bit of the fact that there's a process, but not just a process that requires communication and a certain type of communication. And part of what we're wanting to address today is that there can be not only a lot of dysregulation, but a tremendous amount of frustration in this process, not on just one side, on both sides. And that's really hard to navigate well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because it is messy. It's really messy.
It is.
In the beginning, for quite a few years. It can be truly just a crazy, crazy dance.
And I'm sorry, repeat. Did you say years? Let me make sure that was
A few years.
Years.
Yeah, a few
Forever.
The rest of your life. Yeah.
No, I hope not.
Yeah. Well, there's stages of intensity, perhaps, is a good way to talk about it.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just,
good. That's good.
yeah, and certainly, after discovery, it's very intense, and so, but as we been doing this work and worked with so many couples, and then in our own journey, it's like when you just begin to look at your each of your own backstory, like how would we know how to regulate our emotions? How would we know what intimacy really is? I grew up, parents divorced when I was 8. I was turned over to the wolf pack, my 2 older brothers. I mean, that was my training. And it was like we put my family put the fun in dysfunction. And so, and we didn't even go to church and get that bad teach. I mean, I didn't have that perspective either. And so I come into a marriage and it's like, all I know to do is like, hopefully we're going to have a lot of sex. And Eva's going to have, dinner waiting for me when I get home, and, everything's going to be hunky dory. But we had no idea. And then with your backstory.
Right. My dad being an alcoholic, and mom really just in chaos. The whole family was in chaos. And I went into marriage, and I could not have said this, that I didn't really have the language for it at the time, but everything about my actions were, I will not be abandoned. No one is going to abandon me. So I fought hard for myself in a lot of ways. And what I would ultimately do, though, was abandon myself, because I would give my power away because of my anger. My anger was really rage. I mean, there's good parts of anger, right? Because anger in itself, and that's why Scripture says, be angry, but sin not. I like to think of it like be angry, but rage not. But because anger can really motivate someone, and it did me too, to have boundaries, but not rage. And so I would abandon myself by going rageful, because, buddy, nobody was going to abandon me.
Yeah, and so much of it was just, safety-seeking behavior.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just like intuitively. And again, what you grew up in, just emotional disattunement, and
for sure.
It was not safe.
And not a language, just not even a language for feelings. To me, at the time, feelings were a sign of weakness. Positive feelings were good, but sad and mad, those were all really negative emotions. Fear. I couldn't even, and I would present, and I really thought, I really don't deal with fear. Well, what a joke. I mean, my whole life
you said it, not me.
Yes,
but my whole life was operated from fear.
Yeah.
But I was unaware of that.
Yeah, just anxiety.
Yes,
yeah.
Anxiety. I didn't even know I had anxiety.
No.
I personally carry my anxiety in my gut, and, Roane was aware. He didn't know it was anxiety either. You didn't know that either.
I didn't know anything.
But I think it's so interesting that my parents, both of my parents, carried their anxiety in their gut too. We'll either carry our anxiety in our heads with migraines, or in our chest with it's hard to breathe, tightness in our chest, panic attacks, or in our gut where we may feel nauseated, lose our appetite, have an upset stomach. I think it's so interesting. Both of my parents carried their anxiety in the same way as I did. It really makes me realize how imprinting, it's a term in school that we learned, that what we see modeled, we're more like baby ducks than we realize. The way mama walks, the way daddy walks is how we will walk. And I just find that so interesting at this point. And we will repeat that cycle all over again in so many ways, trauma reenactment, until we know different.
Yeah, and it's certainly the physiological component of like this stuff's in our DNA. Epigenetics, that field of study, is discovering that like living in dysfunctional environments, behavior will alter gene structure. And so that kind of this whole debate of like nature versus nurture, it's a both and in a way, because it was, as you look back in, family history, what you see is like this stuff has probably been going on for a long time. And that's why we talk about the body keeps the score. We talked about that in the previous episode of how the nervous system is connected to that brain stem.
The base part.
Plugs into the limbic system.
Right.
And so those memories and emotions that are frozen there, that's what's really driving the bus. And until we become aware of it, we're just destined to repeat it.
Exactly. So today, if I feel anxiety, or maybe I'm not even aware that I'm having any anxiety, but I feel nauseated or I lose my appetite or I have an upset stomach, the first question I will ask, because my body knows before my mind does, cognitively before I do, I'll ask the question of, what am I afraid of?
Yeah, something's up.
Something's up. What is it?
Mm-hmm. And that's awareness.
Yeah, it is.
But when we're just kind of, walking down the yellow brick road of life, unaware, we live this stuff out. And so, the first step in change is I've got to become aware. It's like the 12 steps. We admit we kind of figured this out. And so as we become aware, and then we begin to look at that false belief system, and I've got to uncover that. And, how did that manifest? Where did that come from? And as I began to, figure out that basically, I walked around in my shame feeling unworthy. And there's multiple messages associated with that. I'm inadequate, insecure, all the things that are I am toxic shame messages, the false belief system. I mean, that's what I'm going to live out, and that's going to drive my behavior because it's the way that I think, and our emotions come out of our thinking.
And when you're betrayed, that doesn't neutralize your false belief system. It ignites it.
It ignites it.
Yes.
It sure does.
Yeah, we often say, what was already there, because like chances are the dynamics in the relationship were in place. It was happening. And then when discovery happens, now it is magnified and amplified. And like Eva, as she said earlier, anger was real. There were some rageful moments even before discovery. And then after discovery, it was magnified and amplified.
It sure did. Yeah.
But it was all there before.
Yeah.
And certainly in the work that we do with couples and even in our intensives, that we have a whole process of where a couple, each individual really begins to see the setup and really begins to understand the messages that were all in place before you ever met your partner.
So I just want to clarify, just being the primary listener here, we're not saying that it's okay to look at your partner and say, based on your history, you're really overreacting. Like you are overreacting to this.
Probably not.
We're not saying that.
No.
But we are saying it is healthy, important, necessary, essential for each person to think through, what am I bringing to this?
Right.
It is what it is, obviously, and we would certainly honor there is such a thing as betrayal trauma. This is real.
It is real.
But the intensity with which each individual approaches it is usually in correlation to their story and what they brought into it.
That's right.
Always.
That's right. And what they saw modeled, like how did mom and dad handle conflict or a crisis, a big life event? How did they handle that? What did you see modeled in that?
It can be difficult though, because if we go for that work too early, then the client is like, we are here because he slept around on me.
Yeah.
I'm not
Right.
interested in talking about my parents.
Oh,
What do you,
yeah.
you know?
And it, like I said, it took me 2 years after discovery before I could even think about my own, what I'd grown up in, what had happened to me. Even though my mother had encouraged me for years, you know, Eva, you need to do some work. You know, but she, at that time she had gotten into, she was a part of Al-Anon. And so she had really gotten healthy and understood how the family had been affected. And she wanted that desperately for me.
Man, what a gift.
It was.
Yeah, what a gift. That's beautiful.
Yeah, she was. She was very supportive.
But you weren't ready.
I wasn't ready.
And that was all
even
right.
though that was
Yeah.
a parent saying to me, I see things in you, I couldn't hear it. I couldn't see it. I had achieved a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so my achievements were really my identity, not.
Well, let's change the subject.
Yeah.
I fear that you're about to say
home.
that's unhealthy.
Yes. And certainly it's the idea that, like, in our process, you know, we obviously are going to get there, but we certainly spend a lot of time comforting the hurt of the betrayal. And that's so important because, again, like Eva said, and I mean, I think any partner, if the, like in one situation that, speaking of helper trauma, the first session, the therapist is giving the wife forgiveness sheets to work on, so to forgive her husband. And I looked at her and I said, so after you grabbed that pen and stuck it in his eyeball, the therapist, not her husband, what happened next?
Forgiveness.
Yeah,
sheet.
because man, that was ridiculous. But that's the kind of stuff that we hear.
I mean, we laugh about it because we're not sitting in it, but that is,
So it's harmful.
that makes me want to drive across
Yeah.
town and whip that guy's
Yeah, you actually,
licensure.
You actually know.
Yeah, that's
No.
crazy. Forgiveness sheet, you know?
Yeah, first session right out of the gate, and so man,
My granddad had a word for that.
yeah,
Cockamamie. Cockamamie. I don't even really know what that means.
I don't either, but I've heard it.
I've got several words for that. I probably shouldn't say them on the podcast.
You introduced, though, to the conversation a word I'd like to just stop on for a moment and talk about, and it was time. You know, we have these things we say it's going to take time, tears, talking, and cash, right? We say that too.
Yeah, money and mucus.
Yeah, exactly. But time is an important part of this equation here because each of us experience that very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I was walking through this with a client a couple of days ago. I said, man, your sense of time is exaggerated because you hate what you did. And you don't want to suffer under that feeling of, this is the kind of guy I am. I can't believe I did this. So every minute to you feels like a year, right? But things are going really quickly over here because you have literally ignited all of your wife's systems that she's probably unaware of. So you guys are experiencing time very differently right now, you know?
So true.
So just, you got to throttle back a little bit and stop trying to force her to validate what a great guy that you have been for 13 years. And this was just a thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like you got to stop, man. Like
No.
we can talk about the gold stars you get for the ways that you were a husband and other ways, but that's not for her to do because of how she is experiencing time.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is part, and I'm interested to have this conversation because I think this is part of the hitch here when the couples are sharing this experience, but having it in very different ways.
Yeah. Dude, you nailed it, because like what she's experiencing is I mean, obviously new information, secrets, things she had no idea, was totally unaware of. And whereas on the, husband side of the fence, and it's something we know sometimes it's reversed. We're just using the more,
Prominent
work
example.
with most.
Yeah.
But on our side of the fence, like in my case, I'd been dealing with that all my life, and in some ways, certainly trying to fight it and overcome it on my own and all that. And so I was aware of it and I was facing it, and with no tools and nothing but trying to pray my way out of it, and just me and Jesus were going to deal with it. But Eva had no idea, and so now all this stuff hits the table. And I mean, obviously, it is shocking. There's a lot to it, but on my side of the fence now, it's like this thing is now out into the light, into the open, and I certainly felt some relief. But I've kind of put the monkey on my partner's back, right?
Oh yeah. Yes, for sure, because it did not, what he was telling me, he had a problem with it, because initially he told me he had a problem with pornography. And, it was before the internet, and he never had a magazine in our home. We didn't even go to R-rated movies. So I just could not even, there were just a part of him that I had no idea who he was. And it made me think, I don't really know you. At this point, we had been married for 7 years, and we'd been together 5 years before that. So we'd been together 12 years.
We are not related. We are from Mississippi, but we are not related.
Totally separate families.
Yeah.
In our process, we ask the story of my life in the questions. It goes through a sexual history, somewhat of a sexual history, and it's amazing to me at the fact that the husband and the wife, they don't know. I mean, those things were never disclosed before marriage, and it wasn't disclosed. But I will say, today, I think it's a new generation, and because of the internet, and porn is a deal. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. I think many couples have that conversation. They talk openly about it. However, going into marriage, I think the guy thinks, you know what, I'm going to be married. I won't have this problem anymore.
Yeah, I'll have all the sex I want.
And the wife thinks, yes, he'll never struggle again because he has me.
Yes.
Yeah. And then when it all falls apart and there's discovery happens, it taps into her feeling, her thinking, I'm not enough.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Always.
That's definitely the setup. And I can agree with you. I think in our vernacular, there are many more conversations happening
today
about the facts.
Yeah.
But we're not having conversations about the impact or the track.
Yeah.
It's like, let's talk about the facts when we get the facts out there, because, authenticity, genuineness, blah, 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 right? But because, and I'm not saying that they have malicious intent. It's just that's all I know is the facts.
Still very unaware of the affect from watching gobs of porn, and I mean it does such a number on us.
Yeah.
And we sold this bill of goods like it's no big deal. Everybody does it. It's no harm.
Yeah.
But now, thank goodness, there's more and more research coming out that shows the harmful effects of pornography.
Saturation, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Funny story, I was at dinner with my son last night, 13, and I was trying to do the good dad thing, which is usually when I get in the most trouble. But we're sitting there having dinner, and I said, pornography, that's not real sex. And he did the kind of the dog head turn thing, like, what? It is sex, right? And I'm like, what? Yeah, I mean, yes, it is sex, but it's not. I felt like Tim Allen for like 20 minutes trying to clean up that. I'm like, well, what I'm trying to say is, and then all of a sudden I was thinking, oh my gosh, he's visualizing his mother and me. Like, abandoned ship, right?
And I think that's how a lot of those conversations go.
That's right. We did land, right, eventually, but trying to make part of the conversation that these are exaggerated, and even a lot of research is thankfully digging into this, violent expressions of the sexual act that we now see that adolescents are mimicking in their first sexual experiences, which is causing a tremendous amount. Talk about setup.
Oh, yeah.
Causing a tremendous amount of damage before marriages are even beginning, because we don't have to have the pulpit saying sex is dirty, save it for the one you love. That matches the experience that people are having in 6th grade and 7th grade. And, it is, and I love the word that you used earlier, Eva, it is so messy. But when I am in feelings of guilt and shame, I want a quick, surgical, effective solution to get me out of that feeling. And honestly, I see so many partners are kind of being forced to clean up all that messiness because the husband just can't regulate. He can't help himself. He's not connected to community.
Oh, yeah.
So if this is going to get better, then I've got to just, I guess, forsake my own healing. But in my client base, that only works for about a minute.
That's right.
Maybe a session or two. And then what happens after that is the partner gets married to resentment. And you can't be married to resentment and your spouse at the same time.
That's right.
Yes, it's poison. Because anger and resentment, they got married and they had a baby, and his name is contempt. And then when that contempt shows up, boy,
which is really bitterness, right?
Yeah, danger.
It's lengthy. That is a lengthy experience when bitterness sets in.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess my question is a really vulnerable question here. How do we help? How do we help this dynamic? You guys are doing this on a very regular basis, so I know that you have answers, but I do know from being in your ecosystem, it isn't the same answer every time, right? A lot of it depends on the couple, and there is a process, certainly, that actually the book we should mention that we don't mention enough on this podcast. The book rolls out the process, but for the couples who are experiencing this in different time frames with different intensity, and particularly the husband kind of goes into this, when am I ever going to be let off the hook mode? And maybe there is a little bit of like rage still continuing, and that's not appropriate. Like, where do we even start with this mess?
Well, I think once everybody can get to, and I mean, when I say everybody, it's really the husband and the wife can get to the place of acceptance. I mean, we each person really goes through a grieving process because the addict is learning so much about himself too. And so, I mean, shame can certainly pop, and it does pop up. The partner is beginning to learn so much about herself as well. So it is grieving what I thought I had, grieving the reality of what has happened, and then the fear of the future. Like, will this go away? Will this get better? Will he be healed? And will I be healed? Well, the partner asks herself that too. And I mean, it's really, I'm going to make it sound really simple, and it's not, because
I am grateful that you will make it sound.
We're men.
We're okay with
simple.
that.
But it really and truly is moving towards acceptance, which takes time to get there. But once you get there, you'll know you're there. I accept that this has happened in my life. I accept that this is the struggle that my husband has. I have to accept my own struggle of wanting to control, of wanting to feel safe at all cost, of all the things that partners will do and feel. But getting to acceptance, and then really building an intimate relationship. And of course, when we say that in here, we do not mean sex. It is and
that was for all the men listening.
It is really being fully known by one another, and it takes feeling like it's weakness when it's really strength, to let Roane know my own struggle. Hey, I'm going out of town this weekend, and you're going to be home alone. I want to go and feel free. I don't want to worry that this is going to be that you're going to struggle yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and we're still having those conversations
today,
and we've only been at this 34 years.
Yeah,
so
in recovery.
Yeah. Next year, we probably won't have to have that conversation, right? Yeah, we'll get back to you
next year.
But today, we still have those conversations.
We do, and that's intimacy.
Yeah,
and I guess we're one of few couples that I know of that have been in long-term recovery and do what we do. And so I think it's important, and I think it's very much needed for couples who are in the beginning to hear from us and to hear what does it look like being married 42 years, recovery 34 years. Like, what does it really look like? And I will say it's rare that we have intensity in the, not that it never happens, because it can, but it's very, very rare. But we certainly have very real, authentic, transparent conversations.
Yeah, it's called intimacy.
Yeah.
And intimacy, the glue of it is vulnerability.
It is.
Because even for you to admit that you're struggling.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to ask a question. Let me go through the side door and just ask instead of going through the front door. If I go through the front door, I'm going to talk about me. If I'm going through the side door, I'm talking about you. I'm asking about you.
Side door's like, hey, what are your plans this weekend?
Yeah, what are you
What are you gonna do with this free time?
But the front door says, hey, I'm feeling some anxiety because I'm going to be gone for 4 days, and I guess what I need is that need to know what your plans are.
Yeah, reassurance.
All right, let me ask you a real question here, like brutally honest. What is it in you? What was it in you that didn't automatically assume that is a judgment question? That's judgment language coming out of my wife.
Oh,
how did you not go there?
Well, I think just, having been in this process for so long and understanding that's just part of the deal, right? And, we talk about it, 3 things that kill intimacy: secrets, silence, and judgment. And oftentimes, we are quick to go to judgment. Like somehow she's asking me that because she's accusing me or something. Well, I think when a wife's going to accuse you, she's going to accuse you if she's got that bent.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't have to be subtle about that.
They typically are not, and you know it. And again, that's kind of going through the back door when it comes in the form of an accusation. But because of our...
Which I used to do all the time.
Oh, yeah. And that's going to automatically create defensiveness. We try to coach partners. It's like, questions need to lower and sharing needs to increase. And it's hard for a partner to be vulnerable because it's very vulnerable to say, gosh, I'm struggling. The story in my head is you're going to do something, and I really need reassurance.
And I guess also the assumption, what you were asking, Roane, why did, say that again, how you asked.
Oh, just how it didn't go to that, man, gosh dang it.
Yeah.
This is a judgment. She's calling me weak, I can't.
That's because he's fully known by me. I know it's still a struggle today.
Yeah.
I know that he can. That
you are open about that.
Yeah, you fight.
Yeah.
He fights.
Yeah, I'm in the fight.
He's in the fight, and he's honest, right? Mm-hmm. And so, that's at least for us, that's reality.
And it's intimacy, right? There's no hiding. There's no secrets, and so, and I think because I know where Eva's coming from, and it's like. I don't go defensive.
And you know yourself too.
Yeah, absolutely. And vulnerability that is the glue of connection.
It's interesting to be able to know, interesting is the wrong word. I don't know the right word. To be able to know someone else's story enough to where I don't have to insert mine. Mm-hmm. I know yours. And I've done enough work to where I don't have to weaponize my knowledge of your story.
Oh, yeah.
I've got compassion on that, and I want to meet you in that story So I don't have to fill in my own narrative here of, I know what this is really about. It's like some kind of detective. It's no, I know my wife's backstory.
Yeah.
And I know why this is coming to the surface. And I am actually, because of the work that we've done, perfectly suited to show up at that show up place.
Amen.
That's just a very different feeling.
Yeah.
But one that most, and I will say, men do not exercise enough courage to do the work to get there.
Oh yeah. And it, it's also trust. I trust that if Eva's got a story in her head, she's gonna come to me with that. She's not gonna backdoor it. She's not gonna side door it. Now, we used to do all this. Believe me, we're poster children for how not to do relationships. But certainly just in our work and doing just being in it. I mean, it is a level of trust that her yes means yes and her no means no. I can trust that.
So I'd like to pause here and pick up next time we're together. Talk a little bit more about this idea of trust and fear, being afraid and backing away, trust moving towards. That's an interesting dynamic that emerges in dysfunctional relationships as well. And by that, I mean all relationships, So I think everyone would benefit from that conversation. Eva, the last time you and I were together, we talked about fear being the root of shame, and that has caught the ear of many listeners. I want to come back to that next time we're together.
Okay.
To learn more about what you've heard today and to engage with the Sex, God, and Chaos team, visit sexgodchaos.com.